Good morning, DFW. You are listening, you're watching to the Dallas Fort Worth Business Podcast. I'm Aaron Spatz. So excited that you're joining me this morning. As I've said in all the other episodes, if you have any type of feedback for the show, if there's people that you want to see, if there's stuff that you really enjoy that is really just hitting you right between the eyes, if there's things that you really enjoy that we talk about here, drop me a line, podcast@boldmedia.us. I would love to hear from you. And once again, this is DFW's business podcast, and it's been a thrill and a joy to produce this for you so far. So today we're going to jump right into it. I've got Justin Berkenstock here with us today. We're going to talk about all sorts of stuff. I did find out right before we went on the air that he does happen to be a Broncos fan. I'm a Raiders fan, in case you couldn't tell at some point, but we'll address that here in just a second. But Justin, hey man, I just want to welcome you to the show, man. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Man, you know, I had to get my jabs in while you're off screen. That way I could just have it set up just right for me, right?
Right. That's okay.
Well, you know, so Broncos, just real quick. So Broncos were 5-11.
Yeah.
You know, what's going on there, man?
It is very difficult to be a Broncos fan right now. Let's just say that. It's kind of not unlike being a Cowboys fan, I guess, that it's been tumultuous to say the least over the last several years. But originally being from Denver, it was hard to go away from them.
Yeah, for sure.
I have met in the airport Mark Bedane. So, the Raiders aren't all bad. Mark's a great guy, and, he's very welcoming and very warm individual, and they've moved. So I hope that he's doing well.
Yeah.
Well,
there's like, you never know who you're going to see in an airport. Like Denver is one of those places. DFW is one of those places. I mean, it's crazy. Like I've got a lot of friends. So I'm probably the only one that does not have some cool airport story, and I've spent a crap ton of time in airports, and I have yet to bump into it. I've probably walked right by somebody and without even realizing it. But there's all sorts of fun stories out there. And shoot, if you're listening or watching this to this show, drop a comment down below about your crazy celebrity or famous person story in an airport. I would love to hear it. There's some really crazy, entertaining stuff. There's a friend of mine who met Michael Jordan back in the day in the airport, and I'll spare the story, but it was pretty hilarious how all that went down. But so let's go back to you, man. Your story. You're originally from Denver, so that answers my first question. I like to ask people is, where are you originally from? Because I don't have that many DFW natives in my hip pocket. So Denver, and then take me from there.
So as a young child, I grew up in Denver, and my father moved us to Northern California to be with the rest of his family when I was 11. So 94, I think it was. We moved to Northern California. I spent a lot of time there. And in 2018, my wife and I decided that we were going to take part in the mass exodus, and Texas was the place for us. We kind of spent some time here. The company I was working for was gracious enough to say that I could take a trip out here and look at our DFW office. So we did that, and found out that people said that we were Texans at heart. It just took us a long time to get here.
That's right. That is the phrase, right? Like, hey, wasn't born here, but I got here as fast as I could. That's the right. That is the I like to joke that I am a naturalized Texas citizen. My wife is a San Antonio native, so I'm like, hey, if I married into it, right, that counts too, right? Doesn't it? Right. So, or you move here, you stay here for a specified length of time, and you're a positive contributing member to the economy. We'll go ahead and stamp your papers, make you a Texan, right? So that's awesome, man. All right, well, cool. So you moved here. I'm looking at your background, right? So you are a fellow jarhead like myself, so simplifying all the obligatory stuff related to that. But tell me a little bit about your story after you jumped out. Looks like this is like pre-move to Texas. So, and it looks like you've done a lot in like the sales related things. So share with me a little bit about what that journey's been for you.
Yeah. So after exiting active service, I decided to go into law enforcement, trade one uniform for the other, like many people do. And, unfortunately, the signs of the time weren't on the wall. So the housing market crash of 2008 was very difficult in the state of California. I think at one point there were 15,000 jobs that couldn't be filled because there was just no money for it.
Dang.
So I made a strategic decision, used my GI Bill, finished my education, and swore I would never be like my father, and I would never be in sales. And here I am. I guess growing up with a guy that now, I mean, he's got 50 some odd years of experience in sales. Some of it rubbed off. And my first job after graduating with my bachelor's in business was in an organization that was doing staffing. It grew up as a contract IT staffing firm, but the owner had gifted the business to his son, and he was a former Navy SEAL. So they had a veteran staffing program. And what I helped Darren do was to sell that into organizations that wanted to hire veterans because they realized that they were highly impactful. They could, they were highly trainable, oftentimes very loyal to the organization, very loyal to the people around them. And they just had a different impact on a business than, a standard bucket of candidates.
Sure.
So I kind of got recruited out of there. I ended up going into something I never knew existed, which was corporate mobility, corporate relocation world, where we had a radical new approach at New Compass Mobility. And that's actually the company I moved here with. So I helped them with what we called a middle market program. It was very new to the industry. Maybe not quite sure that the industry was ready for it at the time because it was a very different approach. We could target different types of clients that maybe didn't have a full-fledged relocation program, but we leveraged our technology that we developed in-house with our software development team. We had, I think 10 or so employees that were just software development folks.
Okay.
So anyway, that got my interest in technology and software really.
Well, wait a second. So like you're talking about corporate mobility and software, like that's a fascinating topic in and of itself. So like, was that, I mean, this just shows like my lack of knowledge in corporate mobility topics, right? But are we talking helping relocate companies from state, city state X to city state Y? Are we talking about helping there be, some type of assistance program for employees that are looking to relocate to a different branch? Like what was that all about?
So in that organization, we're focused on the employee. So our client would have been the organization, and usually somebody in either HR or they had a mobility professional themselves that was organic to the company. And we would help them move their people. So, they want to move somebody from Chicago to San Antonio. We would facilitate the end-to-end move depending on the package the person got.
That's crazy. So like, and what was the breadth of services that was, I mean, are we talking like assistance from finding a realtor and selling your house to the moving company to information about schools and all of this other jazz in the destination city?
Correct. So, where we made a lot of headway, especially with the technology platform that we developed, was, helping them sell their house. We did everything electronically. We were one of the first in the industry to do all e-sign on the documents.
Nice.
But the more core things besides moving your house is that people don't realize how much stuff they actually collect when they're in a location. So we had services that some companies would allow for their employee where they would help them go through everything they had so they're not moving extraneous items and either discard or donate those. Obviously, there's a tax benefit to donation.
Sure.
But that industry all kind of started around the real estate industry. Companies saying the hardest thing about a move is selling your house often. So, with that, selling your house and moving your stuff are the two most stressful things.
It's a pain in the butt, man. It's a pain in the butt.
I did it myself. So since I self-elected to move here, I went through it and I talked to some relocation coordinators and said, hey, let's do this as if I were in the program. And, and I had a little bit of money, because that's really, especially for smaller companies, they may offer a little bit of cash or something like that. So I used some industry contacts. I rented a 26-foot box truck, threw my wife's car on a trailer. My dad drove my truck out here. So, about 1,800 miles. We're on the road for 2.5 days straight. It was challenging. And that industry really is helpful to have somebody there when you're in the middle of something and going, I don't realize how I should be doing this. Can you please help me? All those services, finding a house in your destination location. If you did have kids, finding a school for them. Where's a good bank? Where's a good grocery store that's equivalent, to what I'm used to and has the same brands? It's hard to find out here. I have not been able to find tri-tip pre-cut since I've moved to Texas.
Really?
So that's a change, and people ask those types of questions. Surprisingly.
Yeah, that's so funny.
How do I move my pet tarantula?
A pet tarantula. Well, but like people have their creature comforts. They've got their stuff that they love. I mean, one of the things, and so people that are from Texas or that have lived here anywhere except DFW, you're going to understand what I'm about to say right now. So I lived in Houston. I fell in love with HEB, right? So HEB is this, Texas wide brand. It's like Whataburger. It's like all these other things that we love about Texas. Buc-ee's. It's all these different things that just make some of the jazz about Texas just really, really fun. So, and then moving up here to DFW, it was literally heartbreaking, because you get used to being able to have access to certain things. So if it's a tri-tip steak or it's some item that I like to get in whatever section of HEB, it's hilarious, because when you first said, like, man, you'd be surprised. Like, we get people ask these questions. At first, I am surprised. I'm like, you know what? No, actually, I'm probably not that surprised, because you can tell, like, I have an issue with the fact that we don't have HEB here in DFW. We have Central Market. You may be able to find your steak there too, by the way, but that's not the same. It's not the same experience. Right. So if you grew up around a specific type of restaurants or grocery stores or whatever, and you're from a different part of the United States, you're gonna miss that, and you got to try to latch onto something new. And so that it's fascinating. It's a fascinating journey. So like but your sales role within that. So like how are you selling? How are you actually selling the product?
So we had a very different approach to how we sold that. We took a SaaS-based model, which is different for the industry, and we plugged it in because we felt like there was an entire group of untapped companies that weren't being reached out to. They weren't the usual suspects. Those were done through industry organizations. Everybody goes to the annual convention and sees the same people. You sit down at dinner and have the same conversations year over year. So we said, what if we do this a little bit differently? And the guy that I was reporting to at the time is actually one of the owners of the company, who's a very technology forward individual himself. He is now the CEO and still a mentor of mine, but he and I talked about, what if we did this like you would sell software, and we focus on the software aspect of it, and the software is what powers the services. So we took a wildly different approach to it. We made a lot of headway, got a lot of traction in it, and had a lot of great success. It was just a different model. It was plugging something in that was, I guess you could say it was slightly disruptive, which is fine for me. I enjoy being sort of that disruptor in an industry, and you get some attention. It's not always the attention you may want, but it's still attention. So people are talking about you. And it was successful, for that different grouping of customer base that was, I would say, underserved. They didn't know what they didn't know. It presented all sorts of challenges. We had to pivot very quickly as an organization because operationally we were set up for a traditional model. And to sell that type of a deal where it was more turnkey off-the-shelf programs instead of the highly customized programs that people have been used to, presented unique operational deals for us that we had to overcome. But it was fun selling, and getting people in there to help us sell it was also exciting, and moving that needle for the organization, and growing the program, growing the team was fantastic.
Well, so talk to me about your transition then into sales, and then for those, because if there's a lot of people out there that are curious about just about the whole the sales world. The sales world is very unique, and it differs a little bit depending on what kind of business you're in. I mean, like I'm in full-time sales. I run a very small company doing consulting work, but then you've got large companies that have entire departments made up of salespeople, and so it's like it's like a whole nother world there. So for those that are curious about, so like what is one of the things that you, I guess, were maybe surprised by? It could be a good thing or a bad thing, but once you kind of like got on the other side of a sales career, of what you're doing, like what are some things that you were like, man, I didn't realize that this was actually the way it is, as opposed to the outside looking in?
Well, so I did think that there were going to be the normal challenges, like, gosh, how am I even going to get in touch with these people?
Yeah.
And surprisingly, there are so many tools out there that I didn't realize existed that can help somebody to really dive in and get in front of folks. The challenges, I think, for me, that I didn't realize coming in, one was the grind that you really got to be on top of. We used to talk all the time with sales reps or people that have reported to me. I still say this, is that, one thing that you always have to remember is if you take your foot off the gas, the car comes to the stop. And most salespeople that I see struggle now, that I'm on the other side of it, and I have my challenges with this at times too,
Sure.
is that you start getting kind of worn out, or maybe you're in a bit of a slump. You've got to change your approach. You've got to morph what you're doing to fit current market trends or whatever you see going on. If you're not tapped into that, and you're getting down on yourself, the thing that's usually the first thing to suffer is your activity. And you take your foot off the gas a little bit, the momentum slows down, and all of a sudden you're turning around looking at things going, gosh, what happened? I was doing so well. Now I'm slumping. So the other thing that was really important to me to realize was that there's an ebb and flow to sales.
Okay.
That I wasn't always going to be hitting it out of the park every week. I'm a person that hates to lose.
Yeah.
If I come in second, I'm just the first loser. So that really bugs me. And I had to learn that being okay with not making a sale, or not winning that client that you really wanted, was something that personally was very challenging. And I didn't realize how much pain it would kind of inflict for me in a sales role. I figured that it would be like, yeah, okay, no big deal. I can take it on the chin. I've taken plenty of hits before, just due to my background. There's obviously, and you can probably align with this, there's certain moments of disappointment when you think you're coming home from overseas on time, and then you get told you're not.
Yeah.
If I can take that, or being in a combat environment, then I can take anything. But it was more personally wounding sometimes to work so hard on a deal, and presenting and being in front of C-suite executives at a large company. For them, and you could feel it at the time. You're just staring at them, and they're almost glazed over, like you guys are not a fit for us, and you still have to push through. So overcoming those challenges were something I didn't realize, but it also, I feel, made me a lot stronger.
Yeah.
Being able to recognize that stuff was a skill set that being able to, read a room, read the individual you're talking to, and sort of change your approach on the fly. A lot of people say you got to be able to shoot from the hip really fast. But the one thing that I've learned, again, I go back to my old man when he told me, selling is not that hard. You just got to make people think it was their idea. And he's done it for 50 years. He's been very successful at it. And I take a different approach to it. I like to take more of an educational approach. So I definitely align with more of challenger sales methodology.
Okay.
And I love to educate. So I realized that in my sales journey and my sales career, especially now that I'm in the position I'm in, is that the education and the re-education based on assumptions that may be misaligned unknowingly for not only a customer, but for my sales team and the people that I work with is something that's been very enjoyable. And that all developed in the sales cycle for me with my customer base. How do I get them to realize this fact here that's incredibly important and really makes us a great fit for each other without sounding like I'm telling them what to do?
Right. Yeah, I mean, because nobody likes to be told what to do, right?
Oh gosh, no.
If I'm, like there's a trend, not really a trend. I feel like it's the way of doing business right now. This is something I've advised a number of people on is, like, unmarketing is marketing right now. Like unselling is selling right now. And so if we're being so aggressive in closing the deal because it's what we need and what we want, it makes for a really sticky situation, and people generally don't respond well to it. So like your education approach, I think, is really cool, because all you're simply doing is like you've identified their need, their pain point, and we always solve for pain points. But you've identified their pain point. You've got the medicine, like it's right here, and so it's like helping bridge that divide and helping them. And I think to your father's point is like helping them arrive at the conclusion without forcing the conclusion upon them. So like we're not talking manipulation. Like I hate manipulative sales. I hate the scripted, you're going to box me and like maneuver me into a corner. I hate that crap. But when you've been able to successfully talk with people and like show them like, hey, this is the challenge that you're facing right now. Here's how we meet that challenge. And maybe you say it a little bit differently than that, but you're able to show them and educate, and that's got to be fun, right? Like it's got to be fun to kind of see the light bulb turn on for people and them understand like, oh wow, like this really does work.
Right. I mean, so when you're collaborating with an individual, especially high level people, and you're having high level conversations, they have in their mind an idea of how this is going to work for them and that they're trying to formulate.
I see.
And when you're educating, well, at least for me, when you're educating on facts or maybe points that they may have preconceived notions about, that maybe the data is not all there, they don't have the information, but somewhere along the line they pick something up that tells them this, and then collaborating with that person to then kind of maneuver through that sales journey or the buyer's journey. Really, you have to understand the people, and I think that is where the awesome part for sales comes from me, is that you get this deeper level of understanding with folks when you're collaborating with them, when you're helping them to get there. You're being slightly more consultative than you are just forcing something on them. Everybody likes to use the used car approach.
Right.
I recently have a different example of that. My wife and I were looking for some things that were very specific. We walked into a Williams Sonoma and I had somebody jump down my throat about 3 feet in the door. And I'm like, man, we're just here to see what you have. So if you have that approach where you're just trying to force it, you're probably talking to the wrong people. There's a great book that actually sort of taught me one thing that's been key for me is, the faster you can get to the no's, the more times you arrive at the yes. And the book's called Barking Up a Dead Horse.
Okay.
So I highly recommend that. And there's several others out there that are very good. But, taking those principles, combining them all together, finding what works for you. Because what works for me, likely isn't going to work for you and the rest of the world. You just got to find how you do it. But it's fun when you see, like you said, when they have that aha moment and they go, you know what you're saying makes 100% sense. Let's talk about how we push this forward.
Exactly. At that point, then it's just a value trade. At that point, It's like if the perceived value of this transaction exceeds the monetary component of this, then it's a win, right? It's like, I'm selling this to you for $1 and you feel like you're getting $5 of value at it. That's a layup, so.
Right.
But okay, so when we got from the break, what I want to jump into then and we'll kind of close this section up, and then I'd like to move on to what you're doing now. But first, I'd love for you to share for salespeople out there, like what is, or it doesn't even have to be for salespeople, but just like what's been the biggest lesson learned that you've gleaned from being in sales. So it could either be like the tactical level portion of sales, or it could be some greater business principle that you've learned in your time working in sales. I think it'd be a fascinating study. So we'll be right back. But this show is made possible by our amazing sponsors, and we could not do it without them. And so I'm incredibly grateful for sponsorship. So one, if you are looking for any type of business litigation, business formation, business, any type of help related to business related matters, highly suggest you call Ryan Adair. So with RD Adair PLLC. So he handles various business law matters. So it could be from disputes, litigation, business formation, transactions, and all the crazy messy stuff in between. I would really encourage you to reach out to him, reach out to his firm. Really solid, hardworking people, people that you can trust, right? The people that that you can share what's going on, and you're going to be represented very well, and they're going to work their tails off for you. And so I appreciate them. Any type of business stuff. I mean, so we're talking you just got some type of notice, or you're dealing with some type of issue with another business, or you're trying to get your business started. I would really highly encourage you, give them a call. Solid people, and I'm incredibly grateful for their sponsorship. So, but Justin, so we were talking just a moment ago about some of the things that you've learned in sales, and so like if there's this one thing that you'd want to share with either people that are maybe wanting to pursue a career in sales,
Mm-hmm.
or other people in sales right now, like what's been one of the things that you've learned that you just feel like makes a huge difference, or like that's been so impactful to you for the rest of your career?
So I would say that the biggest lesson that I've learned personally was that you never, ever, ever give up too soon on a deal. That coupled with the fact that time kills all deals, I've seen it time and time again where a young salesperson or more of a green individual that's just coming into the role will push, and they're not getting the responses they want. So they say, oh, this person isn't interested, when it was really just not the best time for them. They give up on it, and you end up seeing that person going to either a competitor, or they make no decision. They just stick with what they've had, when all it took was just a little bit of stick-to-itiveness, and that they haven't followed up or been consistent enough with their communication. So the person down the street, that's what they're doing. The person that is successful is following up regularly. They're not being pushy, but they're just staying in front of that individual. I think those kind of two factors all lead back to the same point of most salespeople that I see struggle are really in a position where I don't know, maybe it's an internal thing for them, that they just kind of give up on the deal, or they give up on the customer. And I think that I've learned a lot about a little bit of persistence, politely, just goes a huge distance with people, that they realize it, and being passionate about what you're doing. I unfortunately can't name the client, but there was a quite large company that does a lot of innovation and design work that's based out of the UK that I was able to sign at one point. And the person that ended up buying from me said, your passion and the way you stuck with this through our ups and downs of how we felt about it is the one thing that solidified the relationship. And we knew you were going to be able to support us. We knew your company was a great fit because of the way that you talked about them, the light that you cast them in, and how excited you were to be there. So that all came with just kind of sticking with it. And it was a short sales cycle, thank God. But, the thing that really stuck to me is that if I had not been on it, it would have gone away. Had I given up when I thought that they weren't that interested, it would have gone away. So that's the biggest lesson that I've learned, that I think people could really take with them, is that don't give up too soon.
And it's solid. It's solid because you don't know if you may not be aware of any other factors that's going on, above them or in another department. It's just a matter of timing, or it's a matter of you just re-engaging because they've got 1,000 other things that they're dealing with, they're going through. And so, man, that's phenomenal. And so, with your sales journey, then, like you mentioned it a couple of times. So I'm really curious what your insight is here. So, talk to the salespeople that are in a slump right now. Talk to the salespeople that, like, man, Justin, I've been swinging the bat. I've been striking out left and freaking right, man. Like, nothing seems to be connecting right now. And like, how do people bounce back from that? How do they regain confidence once they've been thrown off the horse?
Well, I mean, it happened to me earlier this year where the pandemic is in full effect and business turns down. So, it's one of those things where you just got to sit back and get some clarity, really. You've got to take a different approach to what you're doing. What I've seen lately, and a lot of people that are slumping, they're doing activity versus making progress. So one of the things that I try to refocus on if I ever feel like I'm getting into a down cycle is, okay, what have I done in the past that works? Does it still work today? Is it relevant? And take an honest approach to it. One of the things I like to do is I actually will reach out to my greater network and I simply ask the question. I think sometimes people are afraid that they're going to look stupid. They're going to have other people judge them based off of what they're asking or the thing that they're posing to the greater world. So I've a lot of times gone to my resources or my network and said, hey, are you seeing this still work for you? And then I like to reinvent myself. I reinvent my approach, whether it be, okay, well, now because people aren't getting in front of other people and maybe what works for you was that physical interaction where you're sitting in front of somebody. Well, how do you do that today? Reinvent the way you do it. Get a little creative, go see what other people are doing, go listen to some podcasts or something about where people are having success. And, at the end of the day, really the big thing for me, whenever I'm slumping, is take a little bit of time for yourself, because often I've figured out that I'm pushing so hard or I'm going down this road that if I just take a little bit of time and I reassess what's going on, I can find errors in my way and you correct those, you go a different direction. Now, with the current situation, the biggest thing that I would say, it's not that business is down everywhere. It's go do the research and the hard work that I think a lot of people don't like to do. So they just say, well, I'm just slumping, it'll come back when it comes back. Go do the hard work to find where that business is. It's still there.
Yeah.
It's just a different form.
Yeah. Wow. And to your point, it may take a little bit of creativity and changing things up a little bit, adapting your approach. So speaking of adapting your approach, right? So like how has COVID impacted you personally? Like what has that journey been like for you professionally?
Professionally, so the company that I love so much, I got an offer to step away from at the end of 2019 in December, and I went to a company out in Carroll that was doing uninterruptible power supply servicing.
Okay.
So they're like the largest third-party provider of that type of service in the country, and man, we took a hit. Business was down. Everybody shut down. We couldn't get techs on site because they said, the sites were saying we're not going to have anybody. And unfortunately, there was a COVID layoff. And, I was part of that. My team, we took a hit. And while unfortunate, it allowed me some time to do exactly what I'm talking about. I sat back and I said, okay, how can I reinvent myself? I took the time to go out and say, is this something I want to continue with? Being in a sales leadership role, is that something that really speaks to me still? What have been the errors in my ways as far as what I've done? What could I have been better at? I did some self-reflection. I took some time to talk to other companies that were local to the Metroplex that maybe just needed some help. So I threw my resume out there. I did what everybody did. I went bananas and I said, shotgun approach, and then I'll get really specific with the ones I want to target. And I had a good approach to getting another job. But while I had that time off, I went to other organizations. I did some consulting work for some smaller companies that really couldn't afford a sales manager. They had maybe posted a job and it was completely misaligned based on where they're at as a business, where it's like, look, you're the owner of the business. You don't have a big team. You bring on a sales manager that's got high comp and all these other things that you're going to throw at it. You need to realize some things about that. They're going to be a sales leader. You might be better served just hiring an individual contributor. And I started looking at myself going, maybe do I want to go back to that? Do I want to go back to actively engaging with customers every day and just being in the weeds with it? And came to some self-realization points that, that probably wasn't what would best serve my next organization. What would best serve them is to do what I've had my more recent success doing, because that's what I'm more passionate about. And my current, the current owner of my company reached out to me via LinkedIn. I had the I'm open to work tag on there, and I guess he found me while he was searching for a new sales manager. And just one day sent me a message, said, hey, I've got this opportunity for a leadership position on the executive team at my company. I'd love for you to come down and talk to me about it. What are you doing next week? And I was like, well, I'm already committed to another company next week. He said, okay, can you come in tomorrow? I said, yeah, let's talk about it. We worked on a deal over the weekend, and, here I am. So I really took some time in my journey after having been laid off to say, what's important in life? What's the most important thing to me? And what can I be passionate about every day that's going to not only bring me success, but bring those around me success? Because ultimately, if you're not adding that value to the organization, it's probably going to be a short trip. So I really took a lot of time to think about what is going to align with me and where can I make a big impact. And for me, that was finding an organization where there was a tremendous amount of opportunity, which is Atron Group, the company I'm at now.
Nice. Wow. Well, again, there's a lot of people here in DFW Metroplex that can relate to elements of your journey. So, again, I like to throw the question back out there to you, because I think, again, it could be an encouragement to people that are either going through it or they've just gone through it and they're like, man, okay, I'm not the only one here dealing with this. But what was that journey like for you? Like being laid off and then doing your self-reflection, understanding what you need, and understanding, yeah, man, I got some really real tangible needs I got to address with my own personal stuff right now. And then, having the persistence and the confidence to continue to go. So what do you feel like made the difference for you in that interim period of when you're seeking a job? Like what do you feel like really helped bring it all together for you?
Oh man. Well, for me, probably the biggest thing was leaning on the people that I had around me for support. There's, I cannot say enough how important it is whenever you're at an organization or whenever you're out in the community to not burn bridges. So it was scary. I mean, to be honest, I'm sitting here going, okay, I just moved to the state. I don't have my network around me.
Right.
Most of my network's back in Northern California, and they're completely locked down, and I'm certainly not moving back there. So I took some time in self-reflection. I talked with my wife. I talked with my mentor, who is amazing, and I reached out to some other folks that I had worked with, some people that I just kind of sat back and said, who along my professional journey has made comments about how much they recognize me as a professional in what I do and how much benefit I bring to the businesses that I've been at. So I started reaching out to folks that have said positive things about me and my career, and that I've built those relationships with. So some of them were, partners at organizations that I've worked with or that have helped. For example, there's one out of Fort Worth called the Star Conspiracy that I called Steve Smith. He at one point said, "Hey, you're one of the best sales guys I've ever met." So I called him up and said, "Hey, dude, I just got laid off. I'm super scared. I don't know what to do. I went through this before when I was in law enforcement, and it took me a long time to recover because I made a career change, and I'm kind of thinking about doing it again. So what are your thoughts? Maybe I get out of the sales role and I go do something completely different where maybe there's a little bit less pressure and I refocus my energy in life." And he said, "But yeah, you're good at that. So why would you go away from it? It's just about finding the right fit."
Yeah.
He recommended to me even, network. I'll introduce you to 3 people. He said, "I went through this before. I'll introduce you to 3 people I know. You ask them to introduce each one of those people. I'm sorry. Ask them to introduce you to 3 people they know. You're not having a conversation about getting a job. You're just having conversations with people, getting to know them, getting to know what's out there. And, one of those people will hit. Someone will say, 'You know what? Do you want to come work for me?'" So I went down that road. I talked to tons of people. I got introduced all over the place. And it was very beneficial because I started picking their brain. I started saying, what's going on right now that could benefit me? How do I want to change my career? And how do I want to move forward from this? And then, lo and behold, the right opportunity came along for me. So I stayed focused on trying to be positive. It was incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
You could ask my wife about that. There were days when I got up out of bed and said, "I can't do this. Yeah. I simply cannot do this anymore." She said, "No, you've been through way more than this. You can't."
Yeah. Well, you're human. And so I just want to thank you for sharing that. I just appreciate you being so open and honest about your journey. Cause man, it speaks to me. It speaks to a lot of other people out there. So I just want to thank you for sharing that. But and I'm going to brag on you for a second, because I think there's a few things that I've just kind of detected over the last, 40, 45 minutes of us talking, is there's an element of humility about you that I think has served you very well, and that you recognize that you don't have it all figured out. You don't have all the answers. And so you have been wise enough to surround yourself with mentors. And so I think that's a huge, huge, huge takeaway for people. And it's something that I feel like once people get their arms around mentorship and finding people that are down the road ahead of you, right? Let's target some people that have been down this trail before, and people that can really help, offer some encouragement, some guidance, some little bit of direction. It could be just a little fragment of a sentence that helps push you into the right direction. But then you having the humility to reach out to people and to be aware, to have enough self-awareness of yourself to know okay, this is what I like doing, this is what I don't like doing. Where do I go? What do I do? And so just kind of processing that. And I think that's probably been one of your biggest strengths during this whole journey. And so I can kind of even see that now just in the way that you talk. So just a simple observation, man. That's just something I picked up watching. Yeah, for sure. So so now you're at Atron. And so tell me a little bit about that. What do you enjoy most about doing that?
Man, so this company is really interesting. We have so many different things that we can do. It's almost limitless in the markets we can go into or the areas we can go into. So at the core, we're a contract manufacturing firm. So, we fulfill essentially production capacity for organizations, whether it's their intellectual property, where they've designed something. So we focus highly in cable assembly, wire harness. We do sheet metal fabrication, and we also are a packager of industrial gas compression systems. So you've got wildly different things where one day you're looking out on the floor and you're looking at a bunch of switch gear, which, giant structures handling a ton of electricity. And then you look to the other corner and you've got a bunch of people that are building wire harnesses and cable assemblies. And then you go to the back and we've got, a 150 horsepower compressor that's putting out 3,500 PSI in helium on the back end for a customer. And I think the thing that's most exciting for me is that, through all this, and I talked a little bit before about how it's realizing that while certain things may be down, there are other things that are still ramping up and they're growing. There are areas where you can make a huge impact. So the thing that's exciting for me at Atron is that because of our very diverse portfolio, it's we have big business capabilities with a small company feel. We're sole proprietorship. It's not like we don't have a board of directors that's coming down every quarter and hammering the executive team. Thankfully, ours is one person, and we can take our lumps. But it's exciting for me to be able to be in an organization that can pivot so quickly. We can be so agile to the needs of the community. We've had some very exciting projects recently. We are a licensee for the NASA JPL Vital Ventilator.
Wow.
So we were working through that. We had a partner in the medical world that was specifically geared up to sell. So we kept pushing that forward till the point where, a lot of those orders got canceled, but it was a thing that would impact the community. We still have it. We could, if needed, we can bring that thing out at any time. So there's a lot of different things that we can do. And the exciting thing for me today is that Atron Group as a whole can service such a wide array of customers. We have our focus, obviously, that one of the asks for me every year as any sales leader is, what's your target going to be? Where are you hunting? What are we going after? What's the direction? Where are you taking the company? So we've had to adjust that based on the current state of affairs. There are some industries that are just they're not firing on all cylinders.
Yeah.
So we move and we shift, and we can do defense and aerospace work. Those industries have their ups and downs as well, but they're strong. The other industries that we've seen recede a little bit, obviously, are likely to change over the next 4 to 6 months with an incoming administration. So compressed natural gas, that gas and oil has been hit hard lately. So those customers, we're still there for them. We'll service any of their needs. But those people we've got to keep in front of and let them know that we're still there. And as they ramp up and they come back strong, we'll see the benefit from doing that. It's exciting to keep that going, but it's also exciting to explore new things. So what could likely be coming around the corner? Is it going to be renewables? Is it going to be, who knows down here? What's robotics doing right now? So we've got so much we can offer as an organization. Really, our biggest thing that we like to say that we do is at Atron Group, we take a lot of pride in making the complex simple. So somebody's got this really complex build that they're working on. Our specialty and what makes me happy when I can say it to a customer is that we can take that very complex thing and break it down to the simplest level so that we can add value to you in the manufacturing of whatever that product is. We'll find ways to make this more manufacturable. We'll find ways to pull out the cost drivers and maybe even find ways that your design had some issues with it that were unbeknownst to you at the time, but we found a way around it. And here's some help with that. So we can be consultative on the back end still.
Yeah. No, that's terrific. It's really neat. Just the breadth of different industries, different things that the company touches. And it's really that's really cool. I want to squeeze one more question really quick. And then I know we got to go, but you mentioned goals. And I think this is another great question for for other sales leaders out there or people inside of organizations is, like, so how do you go about setting sales goals for your organization each year? Like, what does that process look like for you?
So at Atron Group, we actually use the EOS model.
Okay.
So we have an annual planning. We just did it in December with our team. And we sit down and we say, okay, what's going on? What do we think we can hit? What have we hit year over year? What does the owner want to hit? And where can we make that revenue? One of the biggest things for me when I look at that is historically through the business, what have been the trend lines and what do they look like? How does that line up with the current state of the market in those industries? Because I think when you're setting a goal, there's some pitfalls I've fallen into myself in the past, is setting a goal in a certain target area where you've had success in the past, but it's not current. So okay, we're going to hammer this thing and we're going to keep going down that road, and you just beat yourself up at the end of the day. So I like to look at it from if we're going to set a target and say, to work with a round number, say your target's $20 million. Okay, well, what in your current product mix or your current service offering or whatever it is you have, who are the customers in those areas that can actually get you there?
Yeah.
And can you be successful with them? You may have to have a realignment of your goals at that point. We take the approach of, it's not just about the total revenue dollars, because we would love to make more EBITDA or NOI at the end of the year. The revenue component of that isn't always the end all be all. If you can make a higher EBITDA with less revenue, obviously you're doing really well because you're lean, you're efficient, you're firing on all cylinders. But how do you match those goals up? And I think the other thing is people set these goals very often, but they don't back plan it. So something that I use in my sales career that's been highly successful for me is, okay, it's a thing that Marine Corps actually taught me. Here's where I want to be and where I know I need to get for the organization to be considered to be successful for the year, through all my research that I've done, and preparing for those conversations is key, because you got to know what you're talking about. You can't go in there blind and just think, well, we're going to throw a dart at the wall and it's going to stick. But doing that work and saying, okay, I know this is the goal. It may be a little lofty, but okay, what has to happen right before that for me to hit it? And then what has to happen to get to that point? And then back plan it all the way to today. And what do I have to do right now? And then focus on the task and attack it. So I think that most people, when they fail in planning, is they fail how to see the execution. Yeah. So you have to execute.
Yeah, taking some just pie in the sky number and then just getting mad that they didn't get there, rather than taking it and just walking into it backwards into like, okay, this is what it's going to look like week over week, month over month. So no, that's terrific. I was genuinely curious, because I mean, this has been your life, man. It's been your life for a little while now. So I love to understand, as a sales leader, how that kind of fires off in your brain. I think that's super encouraging. But man, we're really at the end of our time. But man, I've thoroughly enjoyed this, and I just want to thank you for being here. But like, how can people get in touch with you? Like, what's the best way to connect with you?
So obviously, I'm in my position. I use LinkedIn a lot. It's the new medium that everybody goes to. So Justin Berkenstock, you'll find me at Atron Group. So it's ATRON Group. If you want to reach out via email, or anybody wants to get a hold of me directly, J Berkenstock, BERKENSTOCK at atrongroup.com is my email address. I'm happy to connect with anybody. It's actually a lot easier for me to connect via email most of the time than the phone, because my phone tends to blow up on a regular basis. But especially with people trying to sell to me, and I give them advice too, by the way. So if people are trying to sell to me and you're taking an approach that may not be great, I'll certainly offer some free advice.
That's awesome.
But, those are the best ways to get a hold of me, and
awesome.
Realizing that the journey's never a straight line. It's always a jagged curve. So
ain't that the truth, man? Well, no, again, thank you so much for being here. This has been an absolute blast. Thanks, Justin.
thank you. It's been fun.